Whether you might be acquainted with Marvel Comics or DC Comics or Dragon Ball, you might know about a general rule that virtually every single verse out there has a creator, a deity, some sort of supreme god that created everything, is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-present, and can be deemed as being omnipotent. We have the Presence from DC Comics. We have Toribot from Dragon Ball. And the one above all from Marvel Comics. However, just because a certain character might be implied to be the creator of everything or is implied to be omnipotent, doesn't mean it is always true. There might be some holes in there and the argument that could actually make a case for another character. Now what I'm trying to say here is that it is very possible that the one above all is not even omnipotent and could actually very well stand below the power of one of the most peculiar characters out there that many of you probably have never heard about, and that is Oblivion. No, not that Oblivion. I'm talking about this Oblivion right here. Now before you start typing away and telling me I'm an idiot for how would I dare to imply that the one above all is an omnipotent or whatever, just chill out, okay? I'm gonna go over many comic book scans and many other arguments that have been brought to my attention in order to make a case as to why Oblivion might actually have as much credibility, if not even more, to imply that he is actually the true creator of the Marvel Multiverse. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, if you have no idea as to who Oblivion is or any of these other characters or how the abstract hierarchy works, don't worry because I'm going to be explaining that to you. Essentially, there are these beings in the Marvel universe that represent a certain faction of existence. So, Eternity, who is basically this guy who's made out of all this, all the cosmos itself, represents time. And we also have Infinity, his sister, who encompasses space. Then we have Lady Death, who is also their sibling, who encompasses, well, death. Then we have other characters like Entropy, we have Sire Hate, we have Mistress Love, we have Lord Chaos, stuff like that. All these guys represent something that is essential for existence. And essentially, Eternity is the one who usually is deemed as the one that rules above all these guys. And these abstracts actually have these things called manifestation bodies, which is basically like an infinitesimal part of them, right? Like, or just one body, like one clone, or just one little fragment of their whole being represents or guards or looks over a reality or a universe in the Marvel universe, and there's like infinite timelines, infinite universes, so their whole being is made up of all these bodies. Now, above Eternity, Infinity, and all these other beings is the Living Tribunal, who is essentially the judge of the multiverse, and he has more authority than Eternity, and basically looks like a shrouded Oscar statue, like the giveaway, or Grammys, Emmys, whatever the hell it is, you know what I mean. But basically, this golden Frieza looking dude with the hood on his face, he judges whether to destroy a reality or conserve it, or tries to correct something that might be wrong with it. And this guy basically looks over an infinite multiverse, and he's the most powerful out of all these abstracts. Hell, the Living Tribunal is so powerful that he can even shut down the powers of the Infinity Gauntlet, which, if you have seen Infinity War, you might already have an idea about how powerful that is, right? Now, Oblivion is a different matter entirely. Now, there is a lot of confusing information because back in the good old days of comics, right, when they were still fleshing out like what they wanted to do with the whole, I guess, cosmic hierarchy, they implied that Oblivion was also a part of that existence. He also had his bodies. He also existed within the Marvel multiverse. But then later on, they fleshed him out to be a lot more complex than that. So basically, Oblivion is way beyond anything that the Living Tribunal has ever done. And that is because when he was first introduced, it was stated that he was basically the one who represents all non-existence, right? He lives and rules outside of the Marvel multiverse. He is completely unbound by dimensions. Like, he is beyond infinite dimensional, right? So it could be really comparable to the Beyonder, who is pretty damn overpowered as well. So that already puts him above the Living Tribunal because he is not bound by anything within creation itself. And Oblivion first appeared within the 4 issues of Iceman, which is actually pretty cool because Iceman basically tries to recover his existence once again after he basically ceased to exist. And Oblivion actually states that everyone and everything in it are his creations. And Oblivion even states several times that before the multiverse even was there, before the Marvel multiverse even came to be, that he was there. He was at the end of all things and he waits. He essentially feeds on non-existence. Now at this point, people might be saying, okay, but the one above all is the one who created everything, right? But in this case, Oblivion is implied to be the one who created everything. But the thing is, you could say the one above all is the one who is above all things in creation, but Oblivion is above creation itself. Another important thing is that the Living Tribunal and Eternity, they aren't even the very first beings to come out of creation, because if you have read the Ultimates, and if you haven't, that's fine, there is this being known as the First Firmament, who was actually the very first universe that came about, because it is actually part of the first cosmos, and Eternity and the others came about the 6th or 7th cosmos, I believe. And within the Ultimates, there was this plot to essentially turn multi-eternity, which was, of course, the multiverse itself, he represents it, to be turned into just one singular universe. And to do this, they, were threatening all of creation itself, and it was a whole big mess. And Galactus and many of these other beings that were trying to stop it, they said that even Death and many of these other abstracts, more than likely the Living Tribunal as well, would essentially just become a part of Oblivion. That only Oblivion would win in that situation, because if everything is wiped out, if everything dies or ceases to exist, then they would become a part of Oblivion. So even within the recent comics, they're making it clear that Oblivion is essentially standing above everything in creation itself. To further add on more evidence, we also have the Chaos War, which is when this being known as Amatsu-Mikaboshi came around, and I explained what he did in the Marvel Feats video, which if you haven't checked it out, I really suggest you should, because I go more into depth on that. But basically, Amatsu-Mikaboshi came about and he wiped out about 99% of the Marvel multiverse, and multi-eternity, he was like, yeah, I don't think I can do anything against him, dude. It would be like facing off against myself, but I mean, logically, it would be someone more powerful. Amatsu-Mikaboshi would have actually won, but he got defeated by some bullshit, and essentially he would be right up there with the Living Tribunal, if not logically more powerful than him. And then once he lost, Oblivion was like, I'm not even worried, because he is like a really infinitesimal part of what I am. So even a really small fragment or small piece of Oblivion is already infinitely more powerful than virtually everyone in the Marvel multiverse itself, which is pretty scary to think about, right? And even within this comic itself, Oblivion says that before creation was I, where creation ends, I wait. I am the void, the breath between life and death, between death and rebirth, the nothing from which everything springs. This form you see, the throne I sit upon, are illusions I created for your benefit, not mine. For if you looked upon me as I truly am, you would cease to exist, a state of affairs that would please me no end. So basically, if you looked at his true form, you wouldn't even exist at all, just like Call of Duty Black Ops 4 hype, right? Now, I could go on a tirade, I could go on and on about how Oblivion was there before creation formed, before the Marvel multiverse was even there to begin with, before the Living Tribunal, Eternity, or any of these other beings came out. They all sprouted from Oblivion, and once it all ceases to exist, they will return back to him. And think about it this way, Oblivion has directly spoken to the audience. He's basically broken the fourth wall, kind of like how Deadpool and other characters have done so, and he's talked about how he could like destroy our real world as well, so he's like not bound by dimensions whatsoever. It's kind of similar to how the Dragon Ball's universe characters, or the heroes ones, would destroy not only the Dragon Ball world, but also the real world. The one above all within the comics has never talked to the audience directly, meaning that he's possibly bound by the pages himself. And on top of that, it is not even clear as to who the one above all represents, because it could be Jack Kirby, it could be Stan Lee, it could be someone else, we don't know. But there's a lot more in-series evidence and statements from not only Oblivion but many other characters that, hey, he created everything came from him, and once it all dies, they will return back to him. Now ask yourself this question: wouldn't an omnipotent being not be subjugated by emotions or feelings or be somehow explained by humans? Wouldn't they be beyond every single comprehension and level imaginable by humans? And the reason I'm asking that is because of a conversation that was made between Thanos, Adam Warlock, and the One Above All during Infinity Finale, which is one of his very few appearances within the comics. Now, Secret Wars, I've already spoken about this, but the Beyonders came out and they basically killed everyone. That is what they did. The Living Tribunal was dead, Eternity was dead, yada yada. All the abstracts were basically exterminated. And in this case, Adam Warlock was like, yo, what am I gonna do, man? Like, my Living Tribunal's gone, all of the gods in my reality are dead. What am I gonna do about it, right? What if it becomes unstable and, you know, just completely goes kaput? And Thanos was like, don't worry, we can try to strike a deal with someone. And that someone was the One Above All, or referenced as Above All Others in the comic. So basically, Thanos even says, and he prefaces, this being knows everything. He already knows what I'm gonna say, he already knows what it wants, and he already knows what is gonna happen. But for some reason, Thanos said, what if I showed you a reality that you have never before experienced? And the One Above All didn't even negate this. He was like, okay, I'm actually be curious as to see what reality you're even talking about. I might be comfortable with it. So this raises two red flags. One, why would an omnipotent being talk about being comfortable to do something or being curious as to seeing another reality? If you're omniscient, if you already know everything, why would you be curious into seeing something that you have quote unquote never seen before? It is really contradictory, but on top of that, the One Above All even says, oh, I know all things. There's a contradiction there. I just don't understand what this really entails. Now, the way I see it is that the One Above All was merely prompting to get the consent from Adam Warlock because he was like, okay, do you agree with these terms? Do you agree with becoming the new Living Tribunal of your reality? And that is when Adam Warlock said, yeah, I do. And then that's when the whole deal came to be. But that is my headcanon. I mean, it's really not clear what the hell his intention was to begin with, or if the writers, you know, made a doo-doo. I mean, it's just a whole mess, as I said. But the matter of the fact is, there's a lot more concrete in-series evidence and statements that imply that Oblivion is the character that created everything in the Marvel multiverse, and the One Above All is merely more so of a plot device. And I mean, who knows what the true answer is? I mean, there's a lot more variables. This is just surface level too, because there's a lot more things I could get into, entailing Strange Tales and Man-Thing, which I mean gets really complicated. It gets really deep, but I just wanted to stay surface level for this video. So if you guys would like me to do it more in depth on the Man-Thing and see how that turns out, Oblivion and the One Above All, let me know, and I might cover that in the future. But I mean, what do you guys think? Is the One Above All truly the big macho omnipotent dude in the Marvel multiverse, or is Oblivion the one that just actually really takes the cake? I mean, let me know what you guys think. I love to hear you know, your opinions on it. And yeah, I'll catch you thotties next time. Peace out.